Hi, this is Dustin with Dustin's Dollars. Today I'm talking about Tellurian and I'm talking about management slash executives FID based incentives. So their incentives to achieve FID, the final investment decision in Driftwood Phase 1. Before I begin, let me remind you that I am not a financial advisor or a financial professional of any sort. All opinions that I express in this video are mine and do not represent those of any company or any other individual. I currently hold a long position in Tellurian. So basically this video should be for your entertainment purposes only, because I could be wrong about everything that I say in this video, and you need to do your own research before making any investment decisions. So Tellurian, I've covered the stock a little bit on my channel before. Hopefully you've seen those videos if you're unfamiliar with the stock. But what I wanted to talk about today is what management stands to gain, right? For actually leading the company to a positive final investment decision in Driftwood. And, this is just something that I care a lot about, or I care a good chunk about, to understand how is management going to get paid, because it's a big milestone for the company. It's, obviously, I should say obviously, but I assume every investor in the company everyone who is long is betting that the company is going to reach a positive FID on Driftwood, at least for phase one. And so, it's important to understand how, what are management's incentives? Are they lined up with shareholders or not? So I want to just go through that a little bit today. And this is taken from Tellurian's last proxy statement from, I don't know, mid 2021 or so. That's the most recent one. And they do talk about their philosophy on compensation, and they say that there's a couple components to it. They have their annual base salary, they have a discretionary annual bonus, and then long-term and retention incentives. And so those long-term incentives, I think, are what they're talking about when they say, specifically performance-based restricted stock and cash incentives that vest only if we are able to secure a final investment decision by our board to proceed with the construction of the Driftwood terminal, right? Then they have some other things. They have time vested stock options, retention awards. Hey, you stick around. We have these options, or the stock, that restricted stock units that's going to vest, over time. And you see that if you follow all the filings, they get the form 4s every so often. You see more stock vesting for some of the folks that they gave retention awards to. But today I wanted to go over, again, mostly focus on their FID based awards, and you can see some of them in this particular statement here. And they do, let's see, maybe we could find this one here. Yeah, so they specifically listed out Octavio's the CEO, for 2 million shares of Tellurian stock, and for I believe the CFO here, do not believe that I know how to pronounce his name, so I'm not going to attempt it, for 400,000 shares. Some folks also get a cash bonus upon FID, a positive FID decision. And so Octavio is going to get $5 million in cash if they get a positive FID. So that's pretty nice. And they list out actually the other. So these are specifically listed because, it's called out here that these were awarded in 2020, right? This is for the 2020 to 2021 year, right? What they're covering that year. This is what was new. They have other long-term incentive awards that were already outstanding that are shown here in this particular table. Why is it not scrolling? Oh, there we go. Some of their, Meg, the prior CEO, and then some other officers of the company have some pretty hefty bonuses in terms of cash, even just for phase one. And they also have phase two, phase three, phase four cash bonuses. They didn't split this out, what they granted for Octavio or Kian. I'm attempting to pronounce his name, the CFO, I believe. And so I, for now, have been assuming that this is just for phase one. And presumably they'll grant them something else for phase two. Another interesting point before I go, I put some more of this information in a spreadsheet because there's some more stuff down here, just showing you where if you want to look at this yourself and read through it if you haven't seen this before, it's a good source of information. But the one other thing that I would call out is there are some pretty big awards for some folks at FID. And you might wonder, like, well, great, are they going to just like declare FID, get their cash and jet and run out of here? And I think obviously part of the rationale, I assume, for having phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 incentives is to incentivize people to stick around, to see the company through, growing to that point. But even the ones that do vest upon phase 1, somewhere in here it says, let me see if I can find the text. Yeah, so it's buried in here, but they say that most or many of our FID restricted stock and cash incentive awards now require employment for up to 2 years following FID to achieve full vesting or payout, right? And so they split this out for a couple of them. Like, for example, Octavio's shares, they vest, I think, 1/3 at FID, 1/3 a year later, and then 1/3 a year after that. So that at least should give you some faith the executives are going to stick around to continue growing the company even past the phase 1 FID decision. So, like I said, I did pull some of these into a spreadsheet. I have this, and I also have the phase 1 shares. I didn't show it previously, but they also list out there how many shares folks are getting in each for at least just for phase 1, right? I actually only copied those over here. It's pretty significant, right? There's Meg, prior CEO, she still is getting this 3 million shares, 3.2 million shares. Keith Teague, the COO, sorry, I might have that wrong. Is getting 3.75 million shares, and then he has his own cash bonuses and such. So, in my opinion, those are some pretty hefty bonuses for achieving phase 1 FID, as they should be, right? That is a make or break decision for the company. So there you go. This is at least should give you some faith that they really, really, really want to get FID, achieve FID for the company, because they're going to have a huge payout. Not so huge that it's going to it's still only a drop in the bucket, right? If the company's valuation is sitting at, I'm just making up numbers, $10 billion, in a couple, operations, right? But FID is the first step there, that de-risks, quite a bit the company getting to full operations, or getting to at least phase 1 operations. What I also looked at was the current insider holdings, because I actually think, even just looking at the incentives that what is going to be granted at the point of FID doesn't even tell the full story, because there's also a lot of shares that insiders already hold. Most notably, some of the board of directors, and most notably Sharif Suki, the executive chairman, holds a ton of shares, and that's part of my thesis for investing in the company, right? It's that there's already a lot of shares held by insiders, by the board, and by some of the executives, and that that they are actually getting a lot more shares at FID that are vesting over a couple of years, right? And this is going to incentivize them to not dilute, right? And we've Suki has come out on some videos before and said, well, financing is going well. We're figuring out the best way to do it that's going to create the least amount of dilution for our shareholders. And, I believe him when he says that, because he is a very large shareholder, right? He holds a heck of a lot more shares than me. And so that dilution, is just taking out of his future pocket. So he wants to really minimize that, as do, many of these other folks. So as a whole, you see this listed out here. As a whole, all of the insiders, both the board and the executives, hold about 63.5 million shares. I split out Meg. Meg was also listed here. We actually don't know how many she holds anymore, because she's not an insider, so she could have sold some shares even without and wouldn't have had to report that, so we'd have no idea. She could hold 0 shares, but at this point, or she could still hold her 8.5 million. I mean, for what it's worth, she could have bought more. Who knows? But she's not really calling the shots anymore, right? She's not a part of the company, so that's why I don't think it's actually relevant to the topic today. Just to call that out there. But as a whole, all of the executives split out between the executives and the board. The executives hold 42 million shares, and I actually lumped Suki in with executives, because I think he's out there. He's an executive chairman. He's out there, doing things for the company actively in a way that I don't think the other directors really are. And so then the directors themselves hold 21 million shares. And so I thought, again, you can quibble over whether Sharif Suki is actually an executive or a member of the board. just a director. I mean, he's not. He's an executive chairman, so he's doing stuff, and that's I think a defensible way to look at this thing. But there's also, those almost 8 million shares that executives will get granted to them at the point of FID. As one other note for anybody who really wants to dig into the data here, I included 10 million of the shares that Suki has through options that are, I think, 3.25 million shares at 3.5, 4.5, and 5.5 strike prices. So he does also have those. I made myself a note over there, so I remember that. So just as a total hypothetical, I took over that number of shares and I made this column here for how many shares will this person have, post FID. Let me make this a little smaller so we can maybe see a bit more. That's not what I wanted. There we go. So these folks, this column here, column D, is showing how many shares this person will have after phase 1 FID, if I got the numbers correct. And this is column E is roughly what the value of all of their shares will be worth at, let's call the current share price $6 per share. I know today it was down in the fives, five, I can't remember what it closed up, but let's just call it $6 per share. And you can see, what they have here. But then I'm looking at this and what is the potential impact, right? Now, I took a hypothetical future market cap of the company of 15 billion. And I think that's ballpark, if they're successful. I've previously shared how I think they're going to get to about $2.5 billion of free cash flow. Give it a 6 multiple on there, just for hypothetical purposes, call it a $15 billion market cap, right? And so then the question is, how many shares are outstanding? How many shares are we actually dividing that amongst? And so if there are 1.5 billion shares, and 1.5 billion shares, right, that gets you to $10 per share. This is at, like not full operations, at phase 1 operations. So that you can look at what this is, right? That gets, let's just go through Suki's numbers. Right, gets him up to 386 million. And today his stake is worth about 232 million, right? So a good chunk of money. But if you look at, hey, if he's able to do the same thing, but only dilute down to, 1 billion shares, it's looking at more like, $580 million. And if he gets this down to, less than a billion, I just hypothetically put, let's say they only issue another 250 million shares between here and there, because they're already at about 500 million. They have 750 million shares outstanding. His stake could be, we could be looking at $20 per share. His stake could be looking at, close to $750 million himself. Which, I'm sure this is, again, some of the math that he's running in his head, I'm sure, of, I want the share price to be worth a lot, which is good, right? It's good for us as shareholders, because I think his incentives are, as you see here, pretty strongly aligned. I can't recall. I think he's getting a salary of like $1 million per year, $2 million per year. But the point here is that, that pales in comparison to how much money he's going to make from the stake that he holds in Tellurian stock. And, again, alignment of interests for the management is really fantastic, in my opinion. So it is, like I said, part of my thesis for holding a long position in Tellurian. I think that they are going to make good decisions because their interests are aligned with ours. So yeah, that is what I wanted to cover today. Let's see anything on the chat. Nope, not currently. Just as a general, if you're still watching, I do these streams usually around 10 p.m. in Eastern U.S. time. Typically, I try to do it Sunday through Thursday evenings. Sorry, that's Eastern U.S. time if I didn't say that. I do these videos live, so if you ever want to be around, hop on during that time, feel free. I would love to have some chat, have some back and forth with folks. Yeah, so that is everything that I wanted to cover. So I will hop off. Thank you very much.